Welcome to Football Never Sleeps, the aspiring to be viral, overly caffeinated, expertly guest-hosted weekly YouTube show all about Notre Dame football and a fan base that's never going to embrace that Peacock streaming-only game. I'm Eric Hansen, chilling here in South Bend and cranking out some fun summer content at my new online home, blueandgold.com. He's Bob Morton, chilling out a few miles north to me, looking like he could still play for the Blue and Gold. With Tyler James on vacation. Together, we're the content creators and probably troublemakers tonight. On tonight's show, with summer school winding down this week and the summer workouts ending, we're going to take a look at our summer takeaways and maybe what Marcus Freeman's priority list should be in the upcoming season. Offensive realignment, recruiting nuggets, and of course your questions and quips live. So start filling up the queue. This is all right. No oh crap moment today.
Not yet. We are light years beyond the last time I was on.
That's great. So I'm very, very happy about that. And I have to do a little bit of business again with Tyler on vacation. Usually he's the voice of reason and promos and all that stuff. So here's what I'll condense it to. Subscribe, like, leave a comment, preferably something fun and not whiny, and check out our content at blueandgold.com. Why? Because it helps our channel and helps us bring great content, or at least acceptable content, I hope, to you. And Bob and I are going to be together some after the road games for Notre Dame football this fall on the Into the End Zone game, as long as Heather Morton doesn't have a last-second veto on that. I think she's on board, right?
She's on board. I am. Usually she's in bed by the time the night games are done with anyway, so it'll be perfectly fine for me to come in here.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Keep filling up the queue. I'm going to get to your questions in a little bit. We'll work them into the show. And our opening drive tonight is key takeaways as Notre Dame wraps summer and realigns O-line. So Notre Dame wraps up summer school and summer workouts on Friday. The report date back to training camp is July 30th, with the first practice starting the next day on July 31st. We've heard lots of whispers and rumblings about what's been going on this summer. And then we heard a big thud, and that was the accident involving the UT accident in Wyoming over the holiday weekend involving Charles Jagusah, which we have discussed. But since we have Bob and his O-line expertise tonight, we're going to start there and the best path forward. Keep in mind the timeline that we're hearing is best case scenario, maybe mid to late October. And the timeline could be extended just depending on how the healing process is going. I think we'll get something a little bit more official at the end of the month. So, Bob, let's start there. If you're O-line coach Joe Rudolph, what do you think is the best option to move forward?
Yeah, well, I think the best option is having that initial conversation where you're just like, come on, man. And this is not to say that I think athletes need to be kept on a leash. I don't think it's really mentally healthy to do so. But it's just the worst possible timing and scenario, given you had a non-football but workout related injury, going into last year. There was so much excitement that Charles could be a real leader on the field for this team from minute one going into Miami. And now to lose him for the first third of the season, kind of at least, it's just a real kind of, it's a bummer. And I think that when you're having somebody that can be a leader on and their attitude can be a leader off the field, I think you do have to balance the support of that player to say, hey, listen, like, we're going to get you healthy. We're going to get you back on the field. For us to go where we want to go, we need you to be on the field with us. But it's also when you come back from this, you need to be physically healthier than you were, but you've also got to be a little bit smarter in your off time. I think that putting yourself in a vehicle that can roll and do what it did to your arm is probably not where we need to be going. So in terms of what Coach Rudolph is looking to do and what he should do, I think Joe needs to do what Joe's been doing for the last couple years, right? Find the 5 best guys and find the alignment that makes sense for those 5 guys. I mean, we dealt with injuries, it feels like, across the entire line last year. And there were decisions that were made going into week 1 that were just, I think, confusing at the time. And we look back now and he wasn't wrong. And so I've been really excited about the depth of this offensive line. I'm excited to see when we get to fall camp who really capitalizes on how they've changed their body in the summer to really start climbing the depth chart. You got to remember 2 or 3 position battles went differently than we thought they would entering fall camp to the time we played our first game in College Station. And so it'll be a really great opportunity for these guys to kind of slug it out and figure out who's going to be the starting 5 in Miami.
Okay, so in your mind, is there a difference between just plugging in a guy that's played a lot of guard in a reserve role like Solomon Absher, or if you have to make a more complicated move and move 2 pieces, move Anthony Knapp inside and move somebody else, or plug somebody in at left tackle? Are those equal risk, equal reward kind of moves?
No, I think the wisest move is to know who your 6th best guy is, right? And so I was of the mind at the end of last year, not because of anything that he did or didn't do. I was excited to see if Anthony Knapp was going to compete for a role inside. That's what I thought he came to Notre Dame as. He surprised me week in and week out last year. I think he improved as the season went on as a left tackle. I'd be very happy if he shows a lot of growth at that position. But if you have, your 6th best lineman being a left tackle, I would rather get that left tackle the reps at tackle and move Anthony Knapp to really secure that left guard role for the first month or so of the year, because you just never know. It's very rare that you're going to have 5 linemen who are going to make it through the entire season. You're going to need that 6th guy. So whether Anthony plays the entire place at left guard and Charles comes back at tackle, or Knapp goes back to tackle, Knapp comes into center, who knows? I just think you've got to know who your 6th best guy is and make your strongest starting 5 for going down to Miami, because they're going to have athletes on the edge, and you're going to need to make sure that you've got the best pair of feet and the best hand strike out there on the left side.
So the last time you and I worked together, you made a pretty bold statement about how good you thought the 10 deep offensive line could be. And it was something to the effect of the best in a long time, the best ever, something like that. But I cut it out and made a short out of it. So at least you thought this is going to be an elite offensive line.
Yeah,
do you still feel like with Charles Jagusah, even if he's gone for the whole season, that could still be the ceiling for this O-line?
I do. I think Charles makes this Notre Dame top 5 potentially elite. I think the way that he handles himself on the line of scrimmage is just not something that we see a lot. He doesn't just get to a block, but he gets through the person that he's meant to block, and he just does some things with some ferocity that you just love to see as an offensive lineman. And so if he's out for the entire season, I think that you do have a lower ceiling in terms of performance, in terms of those 3rd and 4th and 1s. But I think the offensive line is still one of the strongest units that this team is putting on the field. And when you look at how even the country is looking at the units on our team, the fact that the O-line is going to be one of the strongest units of this team, there's just I still have a lot of respect for the way that the guys are doing their job. And so, Anthony Knapp is a top 5 guy for me. I think he proved it last year. Whether he's a top 2 tackle, I don't know. Would he be a top 2 guard or a top center? I just feel like you have you have guys that have played and shown themselves to be worthy of being on this, hopefully Joe Moore contending offensive line. And whether Charles is there for 2/3 of a season, half of a season, my hope would be that we get him back sooner rather than later, because I think he raises the ceiling, but I think the floor for this offensive line should be pretty high as well.
Let's talk about Charles Jagusah, who's only played 3 games in 2 years, and yet 3 pretty consequential games. And somebody like Sullivan Absher, who was in the same recruiting class as him, who's 6'8", 328 pounds, had, I want to say, around 90 snaps last year in a reserve role. What's the difference, you think, in terms of what Notre Dame can get out of those 2 guys? What's the difference in quality at this stage of their careers and this stage of their experience?
Yeah, I think, I want to make sure that I give somebody like Sullivan Absher his bouquet of flowers, right? Like the time that he's gotten, he's done well. Has he had the really meaningful snaps that in even those 3 games that Charles has had? No, not yet. But that's not to say that he can't be elite at whatever position he finds himself in. And so remember, I mean, not to keep coming back to him, I had a lot of trepidation about starting a true freshman left tackle who didn't come to Notre Dame as a left tackle. And Anthony Knapp silenced me and a lot of other people over the course of the entire season. And so if this is the opportunity that Sullivan needs to be atop the depth chart and to show himself as a top 5 offensive lineman in this room, and to really let his career take off from where it's been, then this is the kind of opportunity he needs to go into the fall camp with the sole mindset of Knapp needs to stay at left tackle. I'm holding this position down. And so on paper, in terms of what I've seen, man, when you see somebody like Charles manhandle the types of defensive linemen he has in bowl games and against Ohio State and Penn State, you just see the potential of what this guy can do against elite interior defensive linemen. You got to think like, man, these guys don't just grow on trees. They are trees, right? Like, is Sullivan going to be that kind of guy? We don't know, but he's got to go in with the mindset of whatever his game is. He's got to use the few weeks of fall ball to show that he's one of the top 5. So I'm not going to say that he's not going to be as successful as Charles would have been. It's very rare for me to watch 3 games of film on one offensive lineman and think like that's a guy who's in my top 5, really, no matter what he does in the offseason outside of a UTV accident.
We've got a few questions I'm going to get to, and we've got a little bit more that I want to throw at you, but let's go with this one from Justin Caney. You mentioned Anthony Knapp. What are your thoughts about his performance in pass protection, especially? You've talked about some of the other things in this question.
Yeah. So, with pass pro for him, the one thing that I saw last year that I saw really against Texas A&M, and I spoke to it, and we kind of saw, over the last not the last several games, but the next several games, we saw some opportunities where it came back to bite him. He tended to be a little heavy-handed as a tackle. Really good hand strike, but he was out over his hands a little bit, which makes you susceptible for a defensive lineman, if they can get your hands off, to spin move inside or, really for a tackle end game that really, was affecting Riley Leonard's blind side. And I didn't really see his hand strike change a lot because I think that it worked for him and he did a really good job. His feet were good. But those heavy hands, the more and more you use them, you're setting yourself up for, specifically on 3rd down or declared pass situations, you're setting yourself up for really long, hard days with really athletic defensive ends. That being said, your hand strike and staying within your base and not getting extended over your toes. I mean, listen, we're talking about a guy who's got 15, 16 games of left tackle experience. Let's say 14 or 15 because of the injury at left tackle in Division I football, and he held his own against some of the best. And so if his athleticism was able to carry him to that kind of success, to have an entire offseason to build himself a new kind of formula of technique, to change his body, to work on his footwork and his understanding of the offense. I'm not putting it past him to be a decided schematic advantage at left tackle, to use a good old Charlie Weissism. Like I am slower to move him inside now that we have an injury because of how well he handled himself last year. Somebody's got to really show themselves to be the sixth best lineman behind Knapp for me to want to move him inside. That's not my first move. But you've got to have a Garby Lambert or somebody who's going to say, you know what, it's my time, and I'm the sixth best guy, whether you put him at guard or put him in for Knapp and move Knapp inside. I feel like someone has to want that job at left tackle before you take it from Anthony.
Okay, before we go to the next viewer question, let me ask you about Garby Lambert and Will Black. So you have Garby Lambert, who was almost this close to being a 5-star, 6'7". He's in the 330s now, but he tore his shoulder labrum in spring practice. He's supposed to be back for the start of the season, but let's say he misses half a camp, and he really hasn't done a lot this summer with his upper body except for rehab. So do you still see him in the same light that you would if that shoulder labrum didn't happen, given his youth, given his inexperience?
Yeah, I think I saw Garby in a couple positions last year, right? We saw him some at tackle. I feel like I might have seen him at guard a couple of times as well. If you've got a shoulder tear, you got a labrum tear there, I would probably be a little more hesitant to put somebody out wide where they've got to really get extended from themselves. I think, I had shoulder injuries and neck injuries for my last 2 seasons, and you're able to kind of put, kind of a restrictor, kind of a brace on, and really keep your arms inside. I'd feel a little more comfortable if he was handling himself between a center and tackle than if he was handling himself way on the outside. But that's, again, just me. It's not me discussing, with the trainers or even what he's most comfortable with. So I think if he's going to miss half of camp, it's going to be a really hard push for him to push outside. Although I think that come the end of camp, he might be able to push for that role inside, even though, Sullivan may have the inside path to take that journey.
So Will Black has certainly made, from what I hear, an early strong first impression. 5-star offensive tackle, really good size, kid from Canada who took an extra year, a prep school year. And so when you look at a guy like that, we look at Notre Dame history. There have been 11 offensive linemen that have started at least one game as a freshman since 1972. Anthony Knapp is one of them. Only 4 of those guys have been left tackles. What would you think about Will Black being in the mix? What's the pluses? What's the minuses of that?
Yeah, it would be it would be really interesting to see, right? I think that Will's a guy that's kind of clearly a tackle, unless, Coach Rudolph really wants to make me eat my words. But I think he's built like a tackle. His body frame is that of a tackle. He's not even super experienced in terms of having, that many years of playing football. I think that what you see from him is this really unique body type, body size, the way he holds himself, the footwork, the hand strike. It's really just built to hold down a tackle position for a long time. I think starting a true freshman, you have to be head and shoulders above the experienced guy that's fighting for that position. I think Anthony Knapp proved that the footwork that he used against Texas A&M was the biggest benefit that we could get in a left tackle against an SEC defensive end. And so for Will to come in and out footwork the guy who out footworked the senior last year feels like a bit of a stretch for me to believe would happen. That being said, your season now is longer than ever, right? And so there are going to be weeks of second team and kind of scout team reps during the course of the season and the end of games, we hope. And you need to make sure that these guys who are rookies, who are freshmen during week 1 at Miami, don't play like rookies and freshmen by week 4 and week 7 and week 9. And so I would not be shocked if you start to see that cream rise to the top where if somebody has an injury, all of a sudden, Black or Lambert go in, they may not give up that position again because their ceiling might be higher than the ceiling we start the season with. It's just a matter of how things go and really seeing how this unit plays and what our offense looks like going through our schedule.
Our next question comes from Bob from Oxnard, California. Bob, I'll let you know that we ate our blue and gold team dinner recently was at the Crooked U. We went to lunch with Bob, his wife, and his dog. We snuck the dog into kind of the outdoor area with us, and we almost got away with it for the whole lunch. But Bob's question is, Joe Otting looked like the best guy to me in the blue gold game. What do you think of him now at 312 pounds, Bob Morton?
Yeah, I mean, you got a 6'4" guy. You're probably looking at him as a replacement inside. I think that just like Sullivan, is going to be looking for this opportunity going into fall camp to say, this is my opportunity to get on the field, to grab a position, and to hang on to it, right? You have 4 out of the 5 guys, more than likely, that have kind of locked down their position to start the year. More than likely, I say, because Joe Rudolph doesn't care about what Bob Morton thinks. You have more than likely 4 out of 5, whether Anthony's at tackle or guard. What you have is you have the next man up, and you've got a few person race to be that next man up. Everybody's trying to prove themselves to be in the top 10, the top 7, but now we're looking for the 6th man. Because when Charles comes back, Charles, I think, is going to work his way back onto the field. It would be, I think, silly to keep him off of it. But who do you have for the first 4, 6, 7 weeks of the season? And I think Joe has really capitalized on opportunities in the spring. I would love to see just kind of how his body rounds out, through the end of this summer, and see how he looks at the beginning of camp, because he's going to get reps in the same way that maybe on day 1 Sullivan lines up there, but you're going to see, I think, Otting playing some snaps with the ones to figure out who's going to be in that 2 or 3 man race.
You touched on this a little bit earlier, Bob, but as a player, would your stance be different than as coaches? You were kind of giving us the coaching lens and the leadership lens. As a teammate, would you be supportive? Would you make fun of him? Would you be mad at him? What would your thoughts be?
100% you're making fun of him. 100%. Okay. Anybody who's a good teammate is busting his tail about it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that, is it irresponsible? Yeah, maybe. I don't know, right? But here's what I'll say. Stuff happens, okay? So my 4th, maybe my 5th year, I think it was my 5th year, we had a bye week. I had a bit of a gimp ankle, and I was helping out at my local church, and we had kind of a day away at this campground. And of all things, I was the largest paintball target that this campground had ever seen. And I decided to try and dodge a paintball and stand behind a tree. I stepped on a root and rolled my ankle. And it was like, felt a pop, heard something, saw the swelling immediately. Right now, if you guys know our training staff, Mike Bean was there. He and Jim Russ were our 2 trainers. And I called both of them. And I said, hey, guys, I know it's a Saturday. I know it's an off week. I need to meet you in the training room right now. And we got into the training room. I started treatment, that day. We came up with a plan that we were going to tell Charlie that I slipped getting out of the shower. I was going to get made fun of, but nobody knew that I was, at a youth group camp retreat playing paintball. But again, on a bye week in the summer, there are opportunities for these players to not just be on a video game or to not just be pawns in a bigger championship play. They've got to be human beings. And I got to think that there was a moment in that UTV where Charles was like, this is not where I need to be right now. And if he could have put it in reverse and not done it, he would have learned, and he has learned from that opportunity. I think as a player, it happens. Stuff happens. And how you respond to that is how your teammates are really going to gain respect for you. I'd love to see him on the field for every single game this season, but I hope that he comes and wants to prove himself to be the best lineman, even though he's only got half of the season that everybody else does.
Bob, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure when you were playing, football players could still play in the bookstore basketball tournament. What do you think about players playing pickup basketball? Because I know a lot of them do. I was talking to Eli Reardon a few weeks ago, and he's like, yeah, I play pickup basketball, and they're playing at Marcus's house with recruits.
Listen, I this is a bigger conversation than just like about college athletes, but like for me, it gets into the discussion that we have about youth and like sports specialization. The more you specialize in one given sport and do only the mechanics of that sport, the more you're weaker everywhere else. So while UTVs is kind of outside of the sports realm, playing basketball, guys running track, training for other things, being on a tennis court, playing pickleball. Are there opportunities for injury? Sure. But listen, you can literally slip in a tub and have an injury. I think these guys using their bodies, which are clearly gifted to play sports, and being somewhat smart about it is really all you can do, because it keeps their body healthier than just being sports specialized. Because, I mean, take offensive linemen. Like, to be healthy as a human being, it's about being able to to stand up from a seated position without using your hands, to be able to run left, then run right. Well, if you're just training for what you do, you're in kind of a duck stance on the inside of your feet, driving into a wall and extending your hands over and over and over again. If all you do is that, you're going to be great at that. But the minute you have to, step over someone and you roll your ankle, you're toast. So we've got to make sure that our guys are enjoying their bodies as true athletes, and it keeps them mentally healthy and out of the grind of just being a football player.
Okay. We will get back into more of the grind part of it. So your Joe Rudolph camp starts July 31st. How soon do you need to have an answer for Jagusah? Can you play with that a little while, or do you need to decide pretty quickly and then try to work on chemistry during camp?
I would have said, hey, you want to get that starting five as quick as you do. But then, I mean, we named Anthony Knapp, it felt like 3 days before the season last year. I trust this guy. I trust him. The way he's recruited, the way he's been consistent as the best five or on the field. I think that we kind of ride or die with him, and he just wants to ride. And so I think that you'll have an answer for who the inside track is early on. You'll also have an answer after the first week of who the 2 or 3 guys really pushing for that time are going to be. And then I think you'll have a top 2 that will probably linger until maybe Miami week. Because if you've got a top 2, the rest of the line knows how to work with those 2 guys. And they are owed that competition until somebody really seizes it. And so long as we have a couple of guys, going into the last week and a half or so, I think you're on pace for the right decision.
Real quick one before we switch topics to something non-offensive line, and we can always circle back, is right in this moment, who would you say, with Charles out, who's number 1 and number 2 offensive linemen? Who would you think are the 2 best?
Yeah, keep Anthony outside, and then I think I'm trying to figure out who was that said in the comments. I think so. Bob Oxnard. I think give me Joe Otting and Sullivan Absher pushing for the left guard spot to start the season. It's my gut of keeping inside guys inside, and let's see what they do. Maybe somebody else decides to push that group, but we'll see how they handle it.
Okay, I asked the question poorly. Outside of Jagusah, take his injury out of it, and he's not included.
Oh, gotcha.
Who are Notre Dame's best 2 offensive linemen going into camp, do you think, at any position without shuffling?
Yeah. You know what? I'm excited to see Emil Wagner. I think that he had a really quiet and understated, solid year last year. I think if he can be a little stouter and not pick up his block so close to the quarterback, I think he's going to have maybe not so quiet of a really good year out on the right side. And then, to heck with it, man. Coming back from the national championship, I was able to sit 2 seats away from Anthony Knapp's dad, and just, getting to know a little bit of Anthony without Anthony being there. And I love Billy Schrauth. I can't wait to see what Ashton Craig does inside. I think they're going to be solid. I think, this offensive line will be what we want it to be inside. But give me Anthony Knapp for being, your next solid guy to come in as a true freshman and have the success he did. I don't expect a sophomore slump. I expect the trajectory for him to be really solid over the next few years. And so, big things expected from 54.
Okay, very interesting. I will say this about Anthony: very fun guy to interview and super smart and very likable, which doesn't win you football games necessarily, but it does play there. There is something to be said for being able to express yourself, and he certainly does that well. So we are going to move on to other summer takeaways. So I did a segment with WSBT with Pete Byrne on the quarterbacks. Bob, if you are Marcus Freeman, what will your time frame be in naming a starting quarterback?
I think you're going to I would like to have a pretty good idea after. I mean, I don't even know how many weeks of fall camp there is anymore. Feels like an eternity.
Well, it goes from July 31st and the opener is August 31st. Yeah. So basically 4 weeks and some change.
Yeah. So let's say after a week and a half, 2 weeks, you're going to have a pretty solid split of reps to who's going to be the number one. I think that you're looking for consistency. I think you're looking for someone who can run the offense that Mike Denbrock wants. I think it's really interesting. Coach Denbrock is on the record as saying there's no reason that our offense won't be more explosive in the passing game than it was last year, which I think is something that we would all be excited to see. I think we all loved how creative our offense was, but I know we were missing some explosive plays, specifically in the first half of the season. So yeah, I think after probably a week and a half, you're going to have a pretty good idea if there's not a decision that's been communicated. But you want to start getting ready for Miami with whoever that number one is going to be, getting all the number one reps. And
if you had to pick who you think it'll be, who would you pick right now?
I'm just gonna say I'd pick CJ Carr. I would. I think that.
Okay.
I think the poise he showed me, even in last year's Blue Gold game, I still remember a play. He broke the pocket, wasn't close to getting touched up for a tackle, and delivered a ball, like 21 yards downfield on the run, just an absolute dot. That's a next level. That's a D1 throw. And I think that Kenny Minchey is a D1 talent, a D1 starting quarterback talent. I just feel if we're talking about ceiling and floor, I think CJ's floor is higher than Kenny's floor. And I think the ceiling is probably a battle between them. I would probably say I feel more comfortable even with CJ's ceiling. But again, this is a guy who's not seen a boatload of film, but I'm just saying what my eyes have seen in a really short, matter of time. I think CJ Carr has got that inside path.
If it's CJ Carr, do you think it makes sense to explore, maybe not commit to, but explore a package role for Kenny Minchey where he's a red zone guy? Or there's certain teams where you could take advantage of his skill set in certain situations? Or would you just say, hey, CJ's my number one, we're riding with this?
Yeah, I think that you've got a loaded backfield now. You've got to take care of, two dogs that really want to eat. Aeneas Williams is going to take snaps. So as you get into the red zone, like, you got to find a way to spread the ball out, not just, create a package in there. And so what do you want your quarterback to do? I do think there will be some packages where the more mobile, maybe the more like just physically athletic Kenny Minchey would make a little bit of sense. Give us a little bit of a flashback with some read option from like Riley Leonard's standpoint, not to minimize Kenny just to that physical role, but to make sure that he has enough of this, a big enough slice of pizza to keep him satisfied for the year. I think that, it would be really, really tough to imagine, these two quarterbacks both being at Notre Dame over the next several years, because they're both really vying for the job, early on.
Why do I get hungry when I do the show with you? I think because you have food analogies.
Yeah,
So
well, and it's not just a food analogy. I could have said slice of pie, but that's not near as nice as thinking of a good old slice of pizza. And so I just really like to drop just the euphemism and change it up just a little bit.
Okay, I was going to bring this up later in the show. I'm going to bring it up now. If Notre Dame beats Miami on the road and we're doing the into the end zone show, would you join me? Would you be up for brandishing a giant turkey leg and taking at least one bite out of it during our show?
I'll be disappointed if it doesn't happen. Gotta be honest with you. I mean, listen, I don't even know where I'm going to get a turkey leg at not Thanksgiving, but I'll go ahead.
I will provide it and get it to you. My son lives kind of near where you live.
Great.
So I will have him bring it over. And now I won't be able to cook it for you. Somebody's going to have to cook it and have that ready. So,
oh, we got this.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So the next thing is, again, we've heard a lot of good things about Malachi Fields. And if you look at Notre Dame's social media account, you can see him and he looks the part. I mean, I feel like this is going to be a big upgrade in the boundary. Now, how big of an upgrade we're going to see. But let's say that we'll not put the Michael Floyd tag on him, although he has that kind of skill set. But if he's an elite boundary receiver, how might this change how Notre Dame attacks on offense? What would that mean to Notre Dame to have a guy that can win 50-50 battles in the boundary and be a pain in the butt?
I mean, listen, like we exited last year excited about the upside of Jaden Greathouse, right? But make no mistake, like Jaden Greathouse for me changes the math when he's in the slot, and you got Faison in the slot who is really solid there too. I think bringing in a solid boundary receiver, it's not just about 1, 2, and 3 though, right? It is about position specific like roles and opportunities. Him taking that position allows us to use our other weapons in a progression, right? So Malachi's a guy that can catch 15 in a game and take over even if he's covered. But if you're going to slant the coverage to him because he can take over a game, then you're going to give up the deep ball to Greathouse. Then you're not going to you're going to cover Faison with an outside linebacker, and he's going to get you on some kind of zig or Texas route and be wide open. You're going to get Eli Raridan on a linebacker, and he's just going to go over the top with it. Like getting somebody who's a top 2 receiver, and specifically your top boundary receiver, allows everyone else to fall into a position where the math just doesn't math for defenses. And that's not even mentioning the athletes that we can plug and play in those different spots, but it's just on the third down that you need, you've got to cover a legit 1, a legit 2, a legit 3, and everybody's in the position that they're best at, right? You've got your boundary, you've got your field in Greathouse, and then you've got a slot in Faison, not to mention, Love, Williams. Don't sleep on Jadarius even out of the backfield. He's been working on that. I know, like, you've just got a lot of people now that fall into better slots for themselves because he takes that position.
Okay, off topic. Who has the topic actually for us? Who has the best pizza in South Bend? Bob, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, listen. So when I was a kid, when I was in South Bend, Bruno's Pizza, the original. We used to always go out there, like southwest side of South Bend. You had to, kind of go
where the casino is now.
Yeah, where the casino is now. That's where Bruno and his wife would kind of whip up some pasta, and the original was there, and his son Johnny ran it for a little while. The name still sticks around with some spots around. I don't typically love those places. For me, listen, don't come at me. I am going to go Barnaby's Pizza, in Mishawaka for my taste, but Rocco's you can't go wrong with, and that's truly in South Bend. So let me go Rocco's in South Bend, Barnaby's in Mishawaka, and I'm throwing my hands to the sky. Don't come at me.
And Barnaby's does have a South Bend location too.
Oh, well, there you go. Depends
I would put those 2 in my top 3. I also, and some people don't like this because it's a thin and it's kind of a sweeter sauce, but I like Starlight Pizza. My kids do too. My adult children do too. I don't know if my grandkids do. We don't treat them to Starlight. We eat cheap pizza. My oldest son has 6 kids. We buy whatever's on sale.
That's it. Get the Jack's pizza from the freezer and let's go.
Okay. Back to football talk here. New defensive coordinator Chris Ash has said he's not going to mess too much with what Al Golden did. I think he's going to mess with it a little bit. I think he's going to have some tweaks. What would you expect Chris Ash to maybe emphasize or maybe tweak or try to improve with Notre Dame's defense?
Yeah, I'd like to see some creative 4 and 5 pressures. I felt like, and this again is just me watching, I wasn't able to see the scheme all the time. I don't get a rear end copy to really kind of see the X's and O's of it all the time. It just felt like to me, we were always rushing 4 down linemen and the middle linebacker. Like Jack Kaiser was taken off like every time. And so like it felt a little predictable to me. And so many pass protections account for those 5 individuals. So how can we change the math a little bit and use some of our athletes on the outside to really, get off the edge to win? Do we have ends that can even drop in coverage to really put the tackles, in difficult spots? I would like to see creative pressure with 5. I don't want to see 6 and 7 person blitzes. For the love of all that's holy, don't give me a 0 blitz ever again. I feel like Al Golden did that a couple times and got burned, and it drove me crazy. But we've got a great linebacking core, and you look at Jalen Sneed, and that guy can come off the edge. He is a problem off the edge. I would love to see him be creatively used to create a matchup nightmare on a slow-footed tackle to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands, because then our safeties and our DBs will have a field day.
Chris Ash, I want to say it was 10 years ago or so, actually put out a video that you could buy about pressuring with the front 4 and so forth. So it'd be interesting if he goes back and looks at his own video. A couple things, too. I think with Boubacar Traore coming back and eventually Jordan Botelho in October, you think about Bryce Young coming on, Josh Burnham being healthy. The interior guys seem kind of twitchy. I mean, Jason Onye, we didn't see a lot of him last year because he missed most of the season. Jared Dawson from Louisville. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how they get after it. And you mentioned Jalen Sneed. I think we'll see him lined up on the edge. And even Kingston Viliamu-Asa, I think, is a really good pass rusher. What's your thoughts on him?
KVA is really, really gifted at finding the space in between linemen. And so it's not only in the passing game, but in the run game, he's just one. I feel like it was half a step faster than any other linebacker. And this was in practices that I saw, it was in scrimmages that I saw, and it was in games. He knows how to diagnose a play just intuitively and to get through the line, which makes him really hard to be a second block for a lineman who's trying to take care of a down lineman and then get to a linebacker. I am not going to let us move past this interior discussion, though, without talking about Donovan Heinesch. Last year, we obviously had a great duo inside at the nose and the 3, 2 guys that are going to kind of go and try and fight for roster spots. I felt like at times we got to the quarterback better when Donovan Heinesch was at the nose than anybody else. His quickness off the ball reminds me of a Derek Landry when I played, who had a great NFL career. He's great hands, high motor, which is not just like a typical way of saying like not super athletic. He just keeps working and working. Like he's just really good at putting interior linemen in difficult situations in the pass rush, and his motor plus his speed means that he gets to the knees of quarterbacks faster than quarterbacks are comfortable with. And so I just feel like even if he's a 2 and he gets some game time, when he's in the game, I expect big things from him.
Okay, Irish fan says, I can't bring his question up because I'm not clicking on it. There we go. This is not a question. Before I forget, thank you guys for making me a smarter football fan. Irish fan, if we had an extra turkey leg for you, it'd be on its way to you right now.
Here's the thing. I don't know if we should be feeling good because we're making him smarter, or if we should feel bad because he just feels smarter after listening to us, right? Like he might just feel smarter because what the heck is Bob talking about right now?
What are they talking about? Okay, well, we'll try to give him some food for thought. Marcus Freeman is going to have a long priority list other than determining who the starting quarterback should be and finding Charles Jagusah replacement. What do you envision should be near the top of his priority list as fall camp begins on July 31st, which is very much in the summer?
Yeah. One of the things I love about Coach Freeman is that, like, the message doesn't change, right? Like, the message last year, the year before is the message this year. Like, we are going to be the best that we can possibly be. We are going to reach the level that we have, and we're not going to let anything get in our way. And I love that because it doesn't change from year to year. Every team is different. Leadership is different. X's and O's can be different. But reaching the pinnacle of what we can do, the message is still the same, and it's a Notre Dame message. The downside of keeping the message the same is that it also falls on the leader to make sure that that message doesn't get dull. And you want to think that, okay, after a game last year, like, Northern Illinois, we're not going to see this team fall asleep in week 2 or 3. Well, a lot of players on this team weren't playing active roles in last year's game, right? There's going to be 30, 40 guys that weren't even a part of last year's game that are on the sidelines. And so you have to find a way to create the culture of your team that is going to carry you through the next 4 or 5 months. I think that he's got to focus on that culture, identify and promote the leaders who are going to drive that culture, and then create a defensive identity primarily, and then a offensive identity secondarily. And the reason I say that is the reason why we could win close games last year was because our defense put us in great positions to do so. Whether with a turnover, a key, fourth down stop, getting the ball back, giving us an opportunity to block a kick, whatever it was, in those tight games, or even in games that were tight in the first half, that all of a sudden after, 11 plays in 3 minutes, we scored, 3 times on. Our defense put us in a position to be elite even when our offense was behind. I think it's important that our offense operates really well. But to me, even as an offensive player, it is more critical that we have a defensive identity first going into week 1, because that will travel. We can make enough plays on offense until we develop that identity. We have to be a defensive team going into Miami. And I think we have the dudes to do it.
Terry Howie says, how do you guys feel about the kicking game this season? I bring this up at this point because August is when you really work on special teams. In the spring, they're inside so much that the kickers and the punters don't really get the kind of outside practice that they need. You start looking at, you'll have your whole complement of possible return people. You start fitting some of the freshmen into the special teams coverage units and protection units and so forth. But let's get to the meat of Terry's question then. How do we feel about the kicking game, Bob?
Yeah. Let me go with a broad answer, Terry, and then I'll come back to more specific about kicking game. How do I feel about special teams? I think it all starts with the man in front. I mean, Marcus Freeman has to be one of the most feared coaches in terms of whenever a kicking a special teams play is about to happen, because he is telling his special teams that I trust this team to execute what we've practiced. There's no single time that the playoff games that anybody could rush our punts, because we had shown half of a dozen different trick plays out of our punts, and almost all of them worked. And so I think when you have that kind of energy in special teams, you have your studs and your young studs trying to make a name for themselves too. You have your dudes who want to play on special teams, and that makes this team, or any team that does that, really scary. How do I feel about the kicking game? I feel like the kicking game is kind of like a Disney movie. Like, I feel like we don't talk about Bruno. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I now love every kicker that I played with. I see them all the time, but like, I couldn't answer interview questions about my kickers when I was on the team because I just never liked the kicking team going out there. I felt like the offense was the best chance to score points. And that's not to say that, Nick Setta and DJ Fitzpatrick and Carl Joya didn't score a lot of points while they were here and help us win some really big games. Shout out DJ Fitzpatrick for helping us beat Navy so I didn't lose to them while I was here. But the fact remains, you're talking about a game of less than inches when it comes to a kicker or a punter having a great season, mediocre season, or a bad season. I mean, how was our kicking game last year? Our kicker didn't have a fantastic season, but he hit the ones against Penn State he really needed to. So I just think that our offense needs to go out there with the mindset that we need to keep putting points on the board. Our defense needs to go out with the mindset that we're going to stop the other team from scoring. And then we just don't talk about Bruno. We let the kickers do what they do and have their spot down at the end of the bench. And we kind of give them a look and tip our cap and say, we believe in you. And then we say a Hail Mary whenever they go out there.
I'll jump in here too. I think James Rendell will be better as a punter, just having acclimated to being in the United States, acclimated to standing on the sideline for most of the game. He's used to playing Australian rules football, and he might punt once in the first quarter and then not again till the fourth quarter. So he has to stay mentally into it. He's gotten used to the rush coming at him without running and trying to run over somebody. He's been getting the punts off. He was better in the playoff. Noah Burnett didn't look great in the spring, but that's pretty typical of kickers. The one thing I really like is Marty Biaggi was a kicker and a punter himself in college, and he can help fix those technical flaws and help evolve a kicker as long as they're healthy, which, again, Notre Dame didn't have a healthy kicker a lot of the year last year. So that's where I think with the kicking game, but we'll pick up that conversation in mid-August when we had a chance to see them and give you a little bit more of a better answer there. So there was another question in the queue about, it was on defense. Let me find it. And it was, oh boy. I didn't say, oh crap though.
Could have went viral if you did it again.
Yeah, no kidding. I think it's this one.
Yep.
For safeties, who will start with Schuler versus Miami? How close is the fall camp competition? Do you want me to take that one first, or you want to go?
Yeah, you take that one, and then I'll give Schuler his shine a little bit.
Okay. Jalen Stroman was brought in from the transfer portal to be that guy, or at least strongly compete for them. And it was kind of insurance if their young safeties didn't come along, if they only had maybe one or two that were, coming along at a good pace. What happened was Jalen Stroman wasn't healthy in the spring, and those young safeties went through the roof. And so Tay Johnson and Luke Talish especially put themselves solidly in the mix. And then you had a couple of early enrolling freshmen, big safeties like Kyle Hamilton, Ethan Long, and Jadon Blair, 6'5" and 6'3". Blair is the 6'5" kid, who also had really strong springs. So there are a lot of good safeties. You're going to have a deep safety rotation. I need to see Stroman play a little bit, but I know that they're very high on him. He missed pretty much all of last season, and having missed the spring, I'm curious on how quickly he gets up to speed. I love Tay Johnson. He is my football crush on this team. And so I think he's going to be in that conversation. But I think if Stroman is the guy they thought he would be, he'll be the one that starts. But it's not going to be like last year when Watts and Schuler were two of the leaders in the country in the most reps played, and not just because they played 16 games. It's because they played most of the safety reps. You'll have a deeper rotation this year. Bob, you're up.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting, right? Like what you saw last year from Xavier Watts, even more so than the year before. What you saw the year before was a free safety doing free safety things, right? So many of those interceptions were Xavier Watts being in the zone that he was supposed to cover, the ball being overthrown or underthrown, and it going right in his breadbasket. Now, that's not his fault. He did his job. He did it better than anybody else, and he ended up with all the interceptions that he had. if you watched him last year, even though he didn't get the award that he got the year before, he was a better safety, defensive back, football player last year than he was the season before. His interceptions were not just overthrown balls or ones that were tipped at the line of scrimmage. He was undercutting receivers. He was flying up to the line of scrimmage. There were games that it felt like nobody else was making tackles, and Xavier Watts had like 9 in the first half. Typically, your line of scrimmage tackles are coming from your strong safety, not your free safety. We just had Xavier Watts being Xavier Watts. So having somebody like a Don Schuler who's coming back and having the experience, don't be shocked if you don't have another Xavier Watts being free safety. You have somebody else that's really great in coverage that can kind of roam the entire field like a Kyle Hamilton, and a Don Schuler starts thumping receivers who are getting a little behind the line of scrimmage routes. We've got a great defensive backfield, which we really were able to have because of our safeties last year. We've got experience coming back at the corners, and you've got time to really bring in a free safety who can do what Chris Ash is going to ask him to do.
Okay, we're going to fly through recruiting here a little bit. So the new Rivals 300 came out today with 2 Notre Dame players ranked as 5-star prospects, defensive end Rodney Dunham and offensive tackle Grayson McHugh. 2 more would be 5 stars if they stayed in their same spots, because they only have 12 5-stars right now. They'll have like 32. And that would be Ebenezer Iwatade, who's also a defensive end, and Ian Premer, a tight end. A 5th player, cornerback Kari Adams, is within striking distance of 5-star. The Irish are looking to add defensive tackle Elijah Golden from Florida as the 27th recruit in the class later this month. Notre Dame ranks number 3 on the On3 industry team rankings behind Georgia and USC. And they did just get a commitment last Friday from 3-star safety Nick Reddish. Bob, as a player, how closely, or former player, how closely do you follow? Well, you could still play. Do you follow recruiting, and how important are the player and team rankings from your vantage point?
Yeah. So let me, I'm going to play both sides of the fence here. Cause like as a former player, I don't care. I don't, right? Like, what was Joe Alt ranked? He was a 3-star, right? What was Anthony Knapp last year? He was a 3-star, right? Dan Santucci, a 2-year starter. Did he have a star? I don't even know if he did, right? And he ended up, making an NFL roster. You just look at the guys that Notre Dame develops, and you're looking for some things that high school rankings don't necessarily cover, right? It just is what it is. You look at other 5-star guys that have panned out, right? You look at like a Jalen Smith. Like, Jalen Smith arguably was a 5-star and won the Butkus Award in high school because of what he did on the 7-on-7 field, not even what he did at Bishop Luers High School, playing running back and linebacker. So like the ranking system is really, really great in some ways, but stars don't mean squat when everybody gets on the field. It is literally, who the dudes are and who the dudes aren't when they get on the field, and the stars don't matter. That being said, I do look at the rankings in terms of how Notre Dame is doing as a team versus these other teams, the Georgia, the USC, Texas. The reason why is there was a time when Alabama ran the SEC and Georgia was consistently number 2. And what happened over the course of like 5 years is Georgia started getting defensive 5-stars at a rate that eclipsed Alabama. And I'll never forget the year that Georgia first broke through, beat Alabama, won their national championship. There was just like numbers of 4 and 5 stars starting on defense. And the numbers for Georgia were better than the numbers for Alabama. And they were knocking on the door time and time again, but they needed the dudes. And dudes come in at a higher rate when you've got that 4th star, in my opinion, right? So 4 and 5, I don't know if they're going to pan out. We've had plenty of examples of 4 and 5 that don't. But getting dudes at 4-star, you're more likely than if you're getting 2s and 3s and just trying to develop them. The fact that Notre Dame over the last 4 seasons with Marcus has been out recruiting teams in the South, Penn State, Ohio State, USC on a regular basis for individuals, and have put classes up there against these teams with the academic rigor of Notre Dame. I don't know if it's ever been done before. I just don't know if anybody's been able to successfully like crack that code like Marcus has over the last several seasons. So the individuals, I literally want to see them on the field without knowing how many stars, are in front or behind of their name. But when I look at what Notre Dame's doing, Justin just said blue chip ratio seems to be a good indicator. That's it. How many guys are we kind of pulling, that these other big schools are kind of going after? We're winning these battles that we haven't won in a real long time. And to me, it just reminds me of Georgia. We're just knocking at the door. And I want to see us kind of burst it open.
Okay, lightning round. 2 questions, one from me, one from Bob Oxnard. The one from me is, because of this recruiting trend and so forth, do you feel like Notre Dame is going to win a national championship before any of your kids get to college?
Yeah, I would think sooner than later would be my hope.
And how old's your oldest child?
Wouldn't it be weird if I said he was a junior in high school, which he's not? No. It's this year. He's going into 8th grade.
Okay.
But listen, I don't think that this is a system in which you can knock for like 5-6 years and then necessarily break through. I don't know if what we have is entirely repeatable unless you have this type of person at the helm.
Gotcha.
And so I am not like the sky is falling if Marcus gets an opportunity to go and bring his Notre Dame pedigree somewhere else someday. Don't think he's going to do it. But if he does, that will like reset the clock for me in terms of will we be able to break through. I think if there's any coach that can take Notre Dame to a national championship, he is already in the building. That's how I feel.
Bob Morton is on fire tonight. Great show. Last one, again, lightning round quickly. Bob, how great was it to be on the field when Terrell Lambert picked off a pass to come back incredibly at Sparty?
Bob Oxnard, I feel like you and I need to go to the Crooked U ourselves, because this is a very loaded question. And I know you guys have been waiting for the Bob Morton story. And this is it right here. That game might have been my worst game that I ever put on film. I hated playing Michigan State. I would play anybody else. There was a Cedric Williams for USC, was like a 2nd round draft pick, nose guard, and I loved going against him. I played against a guy at LSU who was a 1st round draft pick at nose, and I took his lunch that one day, even though we lost. I couldn't tell you a single defensive lineman that I played who was at Michigan State, but they kicked my ass that night to the point where they were telling me, "Hey, 76, you are all over our highlight tape right now." Like a guy got by me so fast that was going to hit Brady Quinn. I literally just grabbed him and sat down, just took the holding call, and the announcers, like my dad recorded it, the announcer said, "Yeah, that was probably better than letting his quarterback get killed." So they were okay with me holding because I got beat so bad. So I played terrible. We could not get anything kind of going. It was raining. Also, side note, I've never lost a game in the rain. So I had a lot, going on, a vested interest. They had planted the flag the year before. And so much going on. And when Terrell picked that ball, I typically don't get really excited until I know something's going to be upheld, because I saw the bush push. I've seen stuff go sideways. When he grabbed that ball, my helmet was on. I said, "We got it." And I was halfway on the field before our defense was off. Like, there was just something in the air that night. And I think for like 1 week, it was the largest 4th quarter comeback in college football. And then some like Hawaii game beat it the next week. But yeah, I had a lot on the line that night. I'm still probably on some film for Michigan State in terms of how good they were and how bad we were. But by God, we got the win. Scoreboard, fellas.
I have an Eric Hansen story for that game. I have never missed a print deadline in my whole career except for that game, and I blew it badly because Notre Dame came from so far behind that the story I had written wouldn't have made sense. So I looked at Jason Kelly.
We both sucked at our job that night, Eric. Thank you for making me feel better.
We're going to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. Just keep writing until they call us and say, where the hell's your story? And we did, and we were better off for it. They actually did forgive us. So
love it.
That's the story of Terrell Lambert.
And we've got the music. All right.
Okay, go ahead.
And then Michigan State stood around their Spartan helmet at the 50-yard line because they thought that we were going to stoop to the class that they did the year before. And so we just we just laughed at them. You know what I mean? Like, they're all standing there like they're really big or something. It's like, hey, take care of your home field and you don't have to worry about taking care of your logo. That's it. I'm out.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for your questions, comments, quips, and for putting up with us. We will be back with Football Never Sleeps with Tyler James next week. And Bob and I will be doing Into the End Zone after road games this year. So the Miami game, we will have Notre Dame wins. Giant turkey legs will take at least one bite. Again, thanks for joining us and have a great week.